Okay, welcome everyone to the MODLR user group. This is our first meetup or meeting for the user group. We intend to have more periodically, but as an introduction, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Grantham Good, Head of eFinance at Pepper Global. We use MODLR as our core performance tool, and my team manages that area along with other finance systems within the head office function. Before we start, just make sure everyone, when they do log on, that they put their mute button on so we don't have any noise in the background. And what we aim to do today is just walk through a couple of sessions, or 3 sessions actually, with 2 partners and myself, very separate types of sessions to just give examples about how we are using MODLR within each of our areas. So, as an introduction, we have Amendra, Pratap, and Amin, Mohammed from Octane Solutions, who will be taking us through a session, introducing themselves and taking us through a session on importing datasets. And then we have Dominik, Servitium, for another partner with MODLR. He will be taking us through a session around cube overwrite. And then finally, myself, I'll be running through some time-based rolling calculations that we've used within Pepper itself. Now, during the session, each one of the organisers of the session will be able to take questions. Probably nearer the end of their session would be easiest, so they can walk through and demo a piece, and then we can ask any questions specific to that area. And at the very end also, we'll have some general open floor questions as well, and we'll just manage those on a case-by-case basis. So if I can, Amendra, I'll pass you the capability, and you can take the share screen.
Thanks, Grantham. All right. Thank you, Grantham. That was a good introduction. We are Octane. I'm Amendra, and we'll also have Amin, Mohammed from our team taking us through a small demo. We're extremely proud to be partnering up with MODLR. For those that know us, we've been around the corporate performance management space for a few years. Because we've just joined MODLR, I'll take you through a very quick introduction of who we are and what we do, and why we have partnered up with MODLR, and then hand over to Amin. Octane, we started in 2016. We've since grown. We started off here in Sydney. Our head office is in Sydney. And since then, we've opened up 3 offices in India. We've got clients in Australia, India, Pacific, and United Arab Emirates. We've been growing every year on year since we started. And 2020, our strategy, apart from battling COVID, is to expand our services. So as part of that, we have been talking to Ben for a number of months and trying to find the cohesion of the product. We are predominantly IBM partner. We are a gold IBM partner, and try and understand how MODLR sits in the offering that we have. Over the months of discussion, we obviously have gained a lot of confidence in what the offering is and what the offering would be for our future potential clients. A bit more about Octane. So we are partners with 3 main vendors, MODLR, IBM, and Blackline. Blackline is a financial automation tool. We now have 7 offices around the world. We were scheduled to open 2 more offices this year, but as everyone is acutely aware, due to COVID, travel has been non-existent, and we have put our plans to open up further offices on hold at the moment. We've got 40 plus consultants and 100 plus project delivery since we've started. A bunch of very passionate people in this space, so we'd be happy to discuss more about what we do at a later stage at some point. The difference, what we bring to the market, which is different, we are end-to-end managed service partner to our clients. So we are very strong in the consulting side of things, of not just being able to deliver or implement something, but to work with the clients around what their requirement would be. The one thing is most of you would probably be aware of that sometimes the clients don't really know what they want and are not able to articulate the technology requirements. So that's where people like us would be able to come in and help them interpret and find the match between what the technology available today is and what they could be doing. For someone who's been sitting in a company doing budgeting forecasting in Excel for 20 years, it would be very hard for him to understand what's available in the market and how to go about it. And unfortunately, those are some of the people that might be in charge of setting the direction for how to implement a CPM system. Anyway, enough of that. We also have got a very strong development team, both onshore, offshore. So our main selling point is that we do hybrid delivery, so onshore, offshore combined delivery, which typically would bring the cost down to half, if not less than half, on a larger project. We've got 24/7 support center, so our guys are getting trained up in MODLR as we speak, so to be able to support MODLR going forward. We also have a very strong arm of providing training. So all the applications that we deal in, we have a detailed training available on all of those, and must admit that this has probably been one of the fastest growing arms of our business in the last 6 to 8 months. Why MODLR? So we partnered up with MODLR for a couple of key reasons. Number one, the platform itself is amazing, as we see now, and it's got a cost-effective planning platform across the board. Does everything that a organization would want. There is a very strong unity between what Octane thought process is and what MODLR thought process is, and that makes it easier for us to come to the table and work together. We've also found MODLR to be quite scalable. So I know sometimes the perception would be that it is a newer system and probably not that scalable, but in our experience and from what we've seen in the market, it is probably much more scalable than what even I imagined when I started off. And it's a new application built on the cloud, and it's amazingly good. Apart from that, the solution offering that it has is quite compelling, so it makes it easy for us to go to the market with those offerings. These are some of the clients that we deal with. While we look at that, I might hand over to Amin to go through a small demo.
Thanks, Amendra. Hi, everyone. So probably I'll just start sharing my screen. Okay, I believe everyone is able to see the screen. So today we will walk through one of the integrations using a pre-made input process. So what we'll be trying to achieve here is we'll be integrating with Google Analytics, which is a web service, analytics web service website, and we'll try to import the website traffic data into a cube in MODLR. So here, what you can see is we have a model which we have already created an import process for in this particular model, and this is what we'll be using for the integration. We also have a cube set up. However, the dimensions will be populated once we run the import process, and that's going to happen automatically. So the first thing that we'll be doing as a part of this would be to create or set up the integration. So for that, I'll just navigate to the integrations page, and here is where we have Google Analytics, where we will be trying to create a connection. So I'll just select it here. Let's do that. Okay, so once this is set up, as you can see, it is active now. We can now go back to our model and run the import process. So for doing that, I'll go back to the home page, and within this, we have got this website statistics as the model. And within the model, I have got the processes, and I've created there is a pre-made process called import Google Analytics. So this is what we'll be executing to pull in the analytics data from that website automatically into the MODLR. So I'll be executing it for a couple of months just to have some reasonable amount of data in the model. So just going to run it from Jan to say July quickly. Right, and then finally the July data. So once we have run it, we can actually confirm whether the process has run successfully or not by checking on the logs page. So to go to the logs page, I'll just click at this icon over here. That's going to show me all the logs that it has generated. So as you can see, one of the processes is still running as it's showing the status has started. So and if I go to one of the logs, I could easily see that the process has actually completed the execution. So this would potentially bring all the data into the modeler. So now we can just go and check the cubes. And as you can clearly see here, there is data that we can see has been loaded into the modeler. So if I now go to a cube and browse the data which I have imported, I can just go into the cubes, and this is the one. So I'll just open that up. Okay. So as you can see, we have this information here that shows the number of users accessing the website, the new users, and the number of pages viewed. And this is by different campaigns that they have run it for, what are the different sources, and by various other locations worldwide. And if I just expand the browser, then it shows the browsers that has been used to access those particular website. So I can actually now also query this data using the assistant. So assistant in MODLR uses the natural language processing, that is AI-based technology, to process the data and also interact with our data in MODLR. Here, I can just click at assistant, and one way of doing it is just giving a voice prompt, and will automatically take into the command that we given and then convert that into a speech, or I can just simply type in the query that I'm looking for. So I'll just type in the query here to derive what are the top 15 say locations for page views in 2020. So as soon as I hit enter, it would automatically generate me a visualization that it finds best fit for the query that I have sent across. So you can see that the modeler has generated an automatic chart for me, giving me all the information of the website hits by different locations, and these are the top 15 locations that it has come up against. So that's one way of coming up and getting some useful insights from the modeler. The other way is, of course, I can simply so if I just click that out. So here is where I have. So if I just go back and open that again, this particular view over here. So this is where I can see the total, page hits for a particular browser, say Chrome. Now I want to see and drill down to the lower level and see the breakup or the details of how this particular data is made up of. So this is where we have something called pivot function in MODLR, which is used to drill deeper into the information within the cube. So if, for instance, we want to understand the kinds of users using a Chrome browser geographically, I can pivot on that member. So to do that, I can simply right click on Chrome and then select this pivot by dimension. And if I want to see it by location, I can just select the location and execute the pivot. So as soon as I do that, I will now get a new view which shows the information that I had for Chrome, but now it's been broken up by all the different locations that have used that particular browser. So, and I can further drill down to a city level. So if it's within Australia, I can see what are the cities which has used the Chrome the most. So this is how you can actually get some useful insights, pull in the data, and integrate with Google Analytics. And that's what I actually wanted to show in this particular demo. With that, I would like to thank you for your attention. So this is just a quick demo on Google Analytics integration. So if you do have any questions, please reach out to me, or if you'd like us to have this process imported for your organization, you can also contact us for that. So with that, I will hand over to Grantham.
Thank you, Amin. Yeah, so now we're moving on to Dominik, Servitium partner for MODLR. So Dominik, if you wanted to take over sound and screen and do your piece.
Hi everyone, can everyone hear me well? I'm just going to share my screen. So I'm going to log into an early access portal for MODLR. And I'm just going to explain a little bit. So up until now, when I had a work view, I couldn't display anything from outside of that cube. So a work view connects to one cube, and that's all we can see. That's all we can manipulate. There was other options that would allow us to consolidate data from multiple sources. So maybe I'll just open up. I've spent last evening building a fictional model for a legal company where they have a number of consultants, and these consultants are expected to make a certain amount of revenue each year. So if I look at my work views, I've created a little consultant plan view. What this allows us to do is allows us to put in a fully amount for a local currency per consultant. So I'll just change that number, and there's a bit of spreading that happens. If I really wanted to understand how that's spreading, what the seasonality is for that spreading, my only options were to go to another cube and use that as a reference, ask someone that knows how to build a dashboard to create a dashboard that shows data from the two different cubes, or actually bring that data out into an Excel client and build another section of that report that references the other cube. Now, when I initially started looking at this cube override, I thought it wasn't all that interesting, because I thought it was quite limited in what you could use it for. But after having spent a couple of days working with it, I realized it actually opens up the web work view to essentially become very close.
Sorry, Dominik.
Yes.
Sorry to interject. I can't quite see a visual feed for you. All I'm seeing is I can hear you, but I can only see a snapshot of your screen.
You can only see a snapshot of my screen.
See it.
So is that better?
We can see the screen. You haven't moved from the front page yet. Is that correct?
Can you? So you can. So what screen can you see? Can you let me know?
The one with the mouse on it right now.
The cube override.
Yep.
Where it has models? Yep. Let me just open that.
Yep. Okay. It's working.
It's working. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I've got 3 screens running here. It's one of those new laptops with the fancy thing on the bottom. It's things get confused. So let me just open that up again. Can you see the work view now?
Yes. Thanks.
Yes, consultant plans. Great. I'll check in every couple of minutes to make sure that you're seeing what I'm looking at. All right. So fictional company where I'm sort of expecting certain consultants to make certain amount of money. So if I change the numbers, you can see there's some sort of seasonality that's being applied. And as I've explained, there's a couple of ways to reference what the percentage is. But what the guys at MODLR did, they came up with this clever way of saying, hey, we can actually allow you to overwrite whatever this cube is looking at with a set of instructions. So what I can do is I'm just going to click on the node time and change the table. And I want to see my phasing for those amounts just up the top. So I'm going to insert a row before this section. And I'm going to do a little bit of manipulation. So I'll double click on it and I'll say, I want to see one consultant, but I don't want the values to represent the consultant. I'm going to actually tell the system to overwrite the cube. And I know my phasing actually sits in a phasing cube. So I'll save that so we can all see what happens. The system's smart enough to go, hey, you actually, I don't actually know what you're trying to show because you're missing certain dimensions. Now I'll double click on that, and that means we need to tell it exactly where to go and what to look at. So I'm going to overwrite set element using formula. And it's missing a phasing, and for a fact I know it's looking at a phasing dimension. And let's point it at a phasing 1 profile. Now I could make this dynamic by adding some sort of a drop-down box here, where a user can select, and I could reference the element of that drop-down box. But for the purpose of this exercise, let's just keep it simple. And that's a phasing 1. So save that. And if I save it, now it's complaining about measures. So let's tell it what measure to look at. I'll go in and add another one of those instructions. I'll say phasing measures, you look at the amount for me. And I'll save that. And we can see there's numbers coming from a different cube at the moment. And let's see if I can open that phasing sample. And there's my percentages coming across into another work view. Now, obviously that consultant one, that's gonna confuse everyone. So you have another option of overriding a header. It's as simple as typing in a value in there. I'm gonna call it phasing percentage, and maybe I'll just to be neat, I'll format it as a percentage formula. So we'll add that formatting section to that. And there we go. Now, so that's pretty much how you would add data from another cube. What is really exciting about this formula, it doesn't just allow you to display the data. I can quite literally go in there and type over it, and it will send data to the other cube. So if I go and refresh this view, it actually changes my numbers in here, which is really really clever. But at the same time, it probably, if you're relying on that percentage to be 100% always, because your phasing is going to be now looking at 356,000 and it's going to spread almost 110% across the months. Now, what you could also do is add a little bit of fancy formatting if you wanted to, which is something that I like to do. You can apply styles using a formula. So this might be a little bit more complicated than what I intended to show, but let's see if we can make it work on this call. So I'm going to link to a phasing cube, so I'm trying to find out if this number adds up to 100%. Because this number doesn't exist in this cube, I have to go and look at the phasing cube. And I'm going to look at a variable, which is my current budget. So it's called budget Y, if I remember correctly. If you can type budget and looking at phasing one profile, and I'm gonna look at the amount in that cube. And if that amount equals 100%, then I'm gonna apply font green. Otherwise, I'm gonna let the user know that it's font red. Okay. Save that, and hopefully I didn't mess anything up in there. No, obviously did. Phasing cube variable.
You got an extra bracket at the end there.
Yeah, found it. Thanks, Ben.
You've got one more at the end of the formula as well, sorry.
Yeah, yes. There we go. Save. I knew I would have made a spelling mistake somewhere. No.
When I was doing these, Dominik, if you can indent them now, so you can bring things down to the next line to make it easier to read instead of scrolling right across.
Yeah, I agree, Grantham. So phasing.
Just missing a square bracket after amount.
Oh yes, you're right. Spot on. That's what it is. It's a reference in the cube. There we go. And I don't need that one here. This is what I've done wrong. All right. There we go. So it's add up to 109%. So it tells the user straight away, hey, something's wrong. You're not at 100%. Now, how are we going to get it to? That's 5%. Was there? Probably not. Let's reduce that to 1%. And let's reduce that to 9%. And there we go, turns to green, lets us know that everything's okay. So that's how you can implement a quick check on how things, whether things are correct or not. You could probably prevent users from running a process if that check fails. But yeah, that's how you would create an override. And if phasing is not your choice, maybe you prefer looking at an exchange rate. So if I look at my AUD currency, I could replace that phasing percentage with a link to my FX rates cube. Quite simply, you would just reorganize all these overrides. Just going, instead of looking at phasing, I'm going to look at FX rates cube. Override set elements. Let's get rid of that. So system's going to tell us what's wrong. And we probably need to change that to be no longer phasing. We're going to call it rate. And we don't need the style formula anymore.
Okay. Dominik, I mean, this is good. I can see a heap of uses for it, and that previously, if you were wanting to have it in a work view, you'd build it an additional measure or item into a cube, but then it would have a lot of redundant.
That's exactly right. So this essentially opens a work view to be very close to what you have in Excel in terms of functionality, which is a really exciting feature. So it's missing local currency. Let's just add that in, and we'll see if we can bring the currency in. So my local currency will be, sorry, this is a little bit more tricky because we're gonna have to look at local currency, and we're gonna have to apply a mapping to it, right? So we're gonna be looking at a currency, and we're gonna look at mapped element. And mappings are, in MODLR, we can create mappings to allow us to look at regions, for example, like in this case where I have Australia mapping to AUD currency. So if I go to the override, I'll just show you quickly where those mappings exist. I won't go into the details of it, but there's my region local currency mapping, and I just quite literally use that in my name, region local mapping. And I know for a fact that I need to look at my local currency, and I'm mapping left to right. And let's save that. Local dimension missing local currency mapped element region local currency. Did I misspell something again? Region local currency local, and it is left to right. Mapped element. Oh, there we go. So spelling error again. So FX rates measure, let's just go and add that last set of instructions and overwrite set element and FX rates measures, and we're gonna call it, but that's what it was. And there we go. It's obviously bringing up wrong formatting. And in this case, we're converting AUD from AUD, so it gives us a rate of 1-to-1. But you can quickly, you can see the benefit of having the ability to reference different cubes from different places, and even being able to overwrite what's coming from that cube directly into here. So you could essentially have a little planning model just using one work view. Yep. That's pretty much all I wanted to show you guys. I think it's a really exciting feature. It's got a lot of uses for it, which I originally didn't think until I started playing with it and doing all kinds of fancy stuff with it. I think it's going to be used quite widely across different models and different customers. Yep. Are you happy to take over, Grantham?
Yeah, thanks, Dominik. Yeah, I reckon it's got a ton of cases really, and I can think of a few just off the top of my head straight away. But and another thing is that when you build those work views, you'll be able to copy them to another work view, so you can reuse all the coding you've done there, basically. So you're not really having to redo.
Yeah, that's right. That's a very valid option. So once you get all this done, you can go through the instructions and copy instructions. And then if you have another work view that you want to reuse all this code, you just paste it back in. Paste instructions, yeah.
Great. All right. Thanks, Dominik. Are there any questions in the immediate for this particular example? Otherwise, I'll move on to my piece. Okay, I'll take over the contents, sharing my screen. A sec. Okay, so for me, all I wanted to do today is just quickly go through an example of a build that we did. So we have year-to-date, 3-month, 6-month, 12-month calculations for some metrics that we calculate in a single cube. And we were required to build that so it could be easily reported and quickly and efficiently defined in the rules and using the methods within MODLR to make it work nice and easily and return good results and consistent results. So with MODLR, for this particular use case, we leveraged the rolling hierarchies within Dimension. We built that through a process, which I'll briefly show you. Then we used that mapping method that you just saw with Dominik to map months to the apparent roll-up for the year-to-date, 3-month, 6-month, and 12-month. We built an assumption cube that will help us with some of the divisors that we needed for the average calculations, and also leverage that same cube for a multiplier to turn off and on the calculation when it's necessary. So, for example, if we didn't want it, we don't need to calculate for out months for actuals because we haven't got there yet. So this multiplier will ensure that the calculation doesn't create an overhead, and then vice versa for a forecast. If we didn't want to calculate, we didn't need to calculate for prior years for a forecast scenario, we would use the similar method to have the calculation multiplier turn it off and on. And then with the use of hierarchies, we established formula restrictions that we then applied within the cube formulas to make sure that we again get the most efficient formula and outputs. Okay, so if I just move off the screen of PowerPoint and move into the modeler world. So I'm going to walk across the screen here. I've already pre-opened a lot of cubes. We're working with dummy data and just a few of the measures that we've created. So it's not a full set of metrics or information, just some basic common metrics that we've displayed for the purpose of this demonstration in our development environment. So what we have is a single cube. So the single cube, we've loaded a number of components or data from various other cubes around non-financial and financial data. And the cube itself is made up of a scenario, which everyone should be familiar with a sort of cubing engine, and which is our actuals and forecast separation, period dimension by month, currency, and then we have things like legal entity and product, which are how we want to cut the data, and then the metrics themselves and the measures. So that's the basic overview of the cube. So the cube itself, when we're talking about the scenario dimension, in the case of us putting restrictions on our formulas, we create a default scenario dimension that has default scenario hierarchy that has all different hierarchies in it. And then in the case of applying a specific formula that you only want to calculate for a specific set of scenarios, we created a separate hierarchy that we'll then use in the formula later on, and you'll see that as we get further on. So that's the scenario dimension. Then we have a couple other dimensions that you saw in the cube view previously. We have a set of measures. Okay, so the measures themselves, in this case here, we have the reference to the output that we're looking for based on the rolling periods. So this isn't how we roll up the items, it's just the particular values, it's just how we represent the final values based on whether they're average, annualized, or a sum of. We also had a raw data landing area, which is a separate hierarchy which has just what we've called unanalyzed, but it's really just the raw data reference, and untouched, no rules, just something we can reference quite quickly, knowing that it's nice and clean with nothing distorting the figures. The other dimension here, which was important, obviously, is the metrics side of it. So again, I've just got a couple of examples of metrics here. We've got a default dimension view, which you have for all of your dimensions, and then I've created the reference to which one of these is annualized. So back on the default, some of these are annualized reference ones here, which we multiply out to be representation of a full year, even if we're in a single month. And we have some metrics, which are just summing, letting the metrics naturally roll up as they do with a normal hierarchy. And then we had the average ones, which are more of a total up to 12 months, but then divide by 12 if it's the case of 12 months. So dividing by the number of months that are represented within each one of the metric measures, essentially. So we've created these three extra hierarchies, and again, you'll see how they're used in the formulas later on. So moving on, we've got a period dimension. So period dimension is our standard period dimension we use across all of our cubes. In the case of hierarchies, you can see we've got a variety of hierarchies that we use for different types of reporting needs. For today's reference, we're really keen on the and looking at the 3-month, 6-month, 9-month, the year-to-date references, because other values or the consolidated values are what we're using in the calculation as well. I've opened up just a couple examples here of how we represent the 3-month rolling, 6-month rolling. So you can see it happens for every combination exists for this 6-month, 3-month rolling hierarchies, separate hierarchies, and they can be referenced within the queues for the formulas. Okay, so then just quickly, I know I'm just getting into a wee bit the JavaScript side of it, but it is interesting how we build these and how simple it is to build them once you know how to do that. We are in a processes area here, and we've got the process that's building the particular period dimension rollups that we just looked at. So I won't go into the detail of the code or critique it, but essentially we're building the 4 hierarchies in this case here, and we're also creating mappings. And so in the single process, we're creating the hierarchies as well as creating the mappings. So the common methods for creating the hierarchies inside a modeler, also creating the mappings at the start of the process. Then we go through and create pass in JSON form the string of the month list. So the month list for us is a single list with only the leaf level month items on it. So it's every month represented with no consolidation. So we're using that list just to get a full list of all the months that exist in MODLR, because we are confident that's our full list of months. And then we're looping through that list, or that array, to create the hierarchies. So first of all, we're just creating the parent levels, and then moving into creating all the child elements that are going to land, or the months that are going to land in all the parent levels. Once we've created 12 alternative parents, and that's just using an offset, which is a standard MODLR reference. We've then gone and created the children, or added these children to the particular hierarchy that's applicable. So 12-month, 6-month, oh no, hang on, 12-month, yes, 9-month, 6-month, 3-month, and then also pushed into a array for the mapping purposes, the same combination of the one of the rolling hierarchies, and you'll see why we've done this when we look at the mapping table. So we create the arrays, and then we down further at the end function for this particular process, we again take those arrays and push them into, or map them using again a function within MODLR for the mapping of each row. So it's a really quick overview of that one, but as you can see, it was not, once you've got the understanding of what you're trying to achieve, it's all just repeatable type references to create the multiple hierarchies there. So one part I haven't shown you is the mapping. So on the mapping we've created in that previous process is the, so we look at the 3-month mapping. Again, we were just briefly in a similar sort of example before with Dominik. Yeah, I'm just going to go and just grab any one of the month levels, and you'll see once I just grab them and it represents them, you can see that all we're doing there is actually mapping from a single month left to the right side to a parent. And you'll see us use this in the formula. So it's a many to one sort of reference there. Okay, so then on the, so once we've got all that set up, now we can just apply the formulas to make it work for us for the calculations. So we've got these, this is the end result, essentially what we're looking for. So we've got percentages here. Again, it's dummy data, so ignore the numbers coming out. But we've got a couple of metrics we're trying to prove out, and we're doing it by each one of these measures here. And in this case here, because I've pivoted by measure, which represents the 12-month, 6-month, 9-month, etc., I don't need to use the roll-ups within the period dimension anymore. for reporting purposes. So as the end user, I just need to bring in the January amount, and I can at any time bring in any one of the results for the consolidations of each one of the measures or roll-ups. Okay, so we talked about before with the different hierarchies we created for annualized, average, and sum. So in this case here, I'm on the annualized one. So now I'm just going to click into the formula just to read the formula, and we'll go to the 3-month one. So if I'm in as an analyst, I can also edit the formula because I'm an administrator or a developer. So, but I want to go and explain the value, which anyone can do at any time in both collaborator view as well as the gateway view, which we're in now. In this case here, just drill into a return result that's not at the consolidated level, and I can start seeing the formula that's in play. Again, I'm not going to rewrite this. It's just somewhat explanatory. What we're doing is creating we're linking the KRI metrics within itself, but to the unannualized measure. So the one that we didn't touch, the raw data, and we're using the mapping table to map to the 3-month, in this case here, consolidated parent. And then because we're talking about the annualized method, we want to divide by 12, but then divide by the assumption time count to give us the annualized result. We've also got this multiplier here that we're using for the formula as well. So this one is the one I talked about, which turns it off and on, and this one here is the assumption time cube we're referencing. That gives us the total number of counts for number of months for this particular 3-month view. So 12 divided by 3, so it's multiplying by 4 in this case, because we're doing the 12 divided by the 3-month consolidation to give us the annualized amounts. One thing I didn't go to with the cubes was the assumption cube, which is the one that we talked about earlier. So in this one here, which I might just grab as a work view. So I've created this cube here, which is the one that provides that count reference for us. So in the case of that 12-month period, it's giving us a 12 count, and 3 months, year to date, is giving us 8 months at this stage in the development environment. And this is actual, so it only projects out 8 months in this case to the year to date view. If we had a forecast here, then it would have a reference for the forecast months only, so we would understand the rolling factors or the multiplier for the formula that exists in the environment here. So going back to here, so we're linking to this cube, and in the case of the 3-month calculation, dividing by 3, giving us the value of 4 to multiply it out to the annualized figure, and then multiplying it by whether there's actually a reference there, so will we actually need this formula for this particular month. So again, there was a bit of setup at the start, but once you've got that rhythm going with the setup, these formulas become quite simple and easy to use. And if I go into this formula again and edit the formula and just go into the formula list, and we're looking at the annualized 3-month, when we talked about the method that we're using for using the hierarchies to restrict the formula. So I've got this reference to the hierarchy that only has the dummy actual and dummy forecast scenarios represented in it, so I only calculate this formula for those ones. I've got the period dimension, so it's only calculating at the lowest level, leaf level, because I don't need it to calculate or try to calculate anywhere else. And then the currency, no restrictions until I get to the metric. So because we created a hierarchy specifically for annualized metrics, I can use that hierarchy to then make sure this calculation only works for those annualized metrics. So I don't have to call out each metric one by one. I can easily add another metric in the future to that hierarchy, and it will automatically calc in the way that I want it to if it's an annualized one. And in this case here, it's just a 3-month reference that I've got there. So the formula itself is pretty simple. I created these formulas a wee while back, but if I was doing it now, I'd start indenting it so that we've got the nice, easy viewing for the user and for yourself. A couple other items in here. The delta symbol here is the turning off of the feeders, because I'm using a count reference to the assumption cube. Anyone familiar with feeders? That just basically what feeds the calculation itself, and when it's so you're trying to not bring in too many feeds that are not necessary for the calculation. So in this case here, the assumption time is not a mandatory part of the calculation. The mandatory part is if it's got an annualized amounts in it. So we're not feeding the items there because we've got the delta reference on them, and the only feeding is coming from this particular reference here in the formula. Okay, so then we have the average one, which if we go to the 3-month reference again, explain value, dig down to the last level, and you can see again it's a very similar formula, but because we're doing averages, we're just basically taking the count, we're not dividing by the count by the 12 to give us the annualized figure, or multiplying out by the 12 divided by the count. We're just dividing the total figure for the 3 by the number of months to give us an average amount, a straight average. And then again turning it off and on through the multiplier. Okay. Another one you can do with actually these ones here, actually the other day, is you can drill down. Sometimes it doesn't really look too flash when you're looking at this level, so you can actually drill down to see a bit more information around the data by drilling into it. And you start seeing the base values. There's a little spyglass on the end of each one of the formulas. Okay, and then we have the sum reference. So this is just summing up total. So again, on the 3-month reference, explain value, drill down. In this case here, it's just summing it, so we're just getting the same value. And then we calculate the metrics that we're after. So again, just some base dummy data there for reference. And we've got still in the same cube, we've got a view where I found it easier from a user's perspective if we make the percentage metric with its children component a parent with all its components for the calculation underneath. So although you can't see straight away what the calculation is, you can understand what is made up, what makes up that final calculation, and then by right-clicking and explaining values, you can then understand it a lot better, and you've got quick access to the underlying figures as well. Okay, so essentially that's our the way we've built up our calculations based on the rolling methods that we've been looking for our reporting metrics. And that, again, if I'm in this cube view here, I can quickly flick between the different results based on the rolling method that we want to look at or represent. Okay. So are there any questions?
Quick question. Are there any, like the skills in TM1, can it be transferable to MODLR?
So the skills
the rules and, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So yes, I've used TM1 before, and that there, yes, they are transferable. So the structures are cubes. We're talking about dimensions, structures. We've got processes, which are somewhat similar to your TI processes you have in, say, TM1. And but it does have a few more features that are quite unique to MODLR that do help get past a lot of the complexities potentially that you'd create in TM1. But also another feature, the MODLR side of things, is that when you saw the this part here, so I mean, in layman's terms, it looks complicated, but it's actually not too complicated once you get an understanding of the JavaScript. But it is JavaScript, so it's something that's generically available across the globe. And then there's the built-in functions that MODLR provide as well, which are in their documentation that you can add to the scripting. So the scripting itself is it's not so much a proprietary TM1 language as it is in TM1. It's the JavaScript method that you're using. Is there anything you want to add there, Dominik or Amendra?
Yeah, I guess with JavaScripting you have a lot more options than TM1 did, or other applications, because you have use of arrays and lists and things like that, which are very useful, as I'm sure you found Grantham as well. I mean, the ability to reference a JSON file for mapping and things like that opens a whole world of possibilities as well. And being able to just naturally build a connector through an API and being able to process JSON. I've always found that a big pain point with other platforms.
I have a question, Grantham. So what were some of your key resources that you used to help you get through building the KRI metrics cube?
Yeah, so look, certainly easy enough to explain it now, but learning the features, I think, was the biggest learning curve, was how you could utilize them, and then understanding conceptually how you could use those inside a KRI method. So we did have a understanding of what KPI or metrics cube. We had an understanding of the calculations. We knew what the components of each calculation was, so we knew what the end result was going to be. But difficulty, I guess, at the start was I was trying to understand how to utilize the period dimension, but make it easy for the users to be able to flick between any one of the rolling periods, and not having to go through different hierarchies and through different roll-ups and searching across those roll-ups to find a particular month. So yeah, when it all came together around the mappings, I think was the biggest discovery, being able to map the consolidated values from each one of the rolling periods to a single month, and then applying the different measures, or making the measures the representation of those outputs, was when it was a bit of a windfall in that regard. And then trying to, so a lot of the understanding of how to has come from working with people like Dominik and also the MODLR team as well. So the MODLR team have been very good in that. They've been able to pass on any information or advice around how to do specific use cases, and that there's certainly benefit and accelerated the end result. I mean, there's probably other ways you could build that particular use case or output, but I did find that was probably the most simplest in the end, once you got past the point of understanding all the components that need to be put in place to make it work nice and easily within the formulas. Okay. Does that answer your question, Paul?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
So are there any other questions? Now, these can be general questions. They can be questions about the user group as well. So just as you're aware, middle of COVID, we're having this online method for the user group, but I think long term we would start looking at Sydney-based probably initially, and other regional-based Australia or APAC ones that we could introduce. I put my hand up for this one, and we've got a couple of partners on board for this one as well, as you saw. And I think the next one will be chasing a few other customers to see if they want to present anything for the user group itself. And hopefully things have become a bit easier for us to travel, so we can have a bit more of a social aspect around it. So post this meeting, we'll be in touch with various people, and I guess just from your part, if you can think about anything that you'd like to present. It won't be in the immediate. We are looking at probably a quarterly user group at this stage, because it'd be too busy otherwise if we had it every month. So if you do come up with any ideas, do pass them back to myself or via the MODLR team, and they can feed it on to us, and we can figure out the timing for the next one. But are there any questions in general form or specifically about what you saw today? Yeah, so we've just hit the 1 hour mark, and so what I'll do is close the meeting up. But I'd like to thank everyone today for certainly logging on and joining up with the user group. Hopefully you found some value with the sessions that were presented. Thanks, Dominik and Amendra, for your piece as well. It's been really informative, and it's always good to see the new things that are coming through and the features that are available within MODLR. But yeah, thanks everyone for tuning up to the user group, and we'll be keep an eye on the meetups page for any news about any further meetups or information on the user group itself. Okay, thank you very much.